The Minmatar Republic Maelstrom is one of those ships that I think a lot of people are surprised I haven't covered earlier. After all, it is a Minmatar vessel, and it uses cannons, my favourite weapon system. Well, yes, true, but it is also a battleship, and I'm not personally a huge fan of battleship-sized hulls. There are some exceptions to this, but for the most part I prefer cruisers and frigates for my day-to-day activities. That said, a lot of you folks in my community have requested that I talk about the Minmatar Republic's Maelstrom in regards to its capabilities in C3 wormhole ratting, and so I thought, yeah, it's about time that I grabbed this ship, took it out for a spin, and let you folks know what I think. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what this ship is, how it works, and a couple of fits that I've played with and found that actually do seem to work quite nicely. So, let's find out if the Maelstrom is worth it for ratting. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome back to another video for EVE Online. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Minmatar Republic's Maelstrom battleship. This is one of those vessels that a lot of you have requested that I cover in this sort of C3 wormhole ratting series. Can it complete all of the sites? Is it a good option for this? How does it stack up against other vessels for running this kind of content? Now, of course, it's a Minmatar ship. I adore Minmatar ships, and the Maelstrom, actually visually, is one of the ones that I do fairly like. I prefer the Tempest hull personally, aesthetically at least, but the Maelstrom, there's a lot of advantages to this hull. I do quite like how it looks. It definitely flies really well, but how does it hold up for J-Space ratting? Well, that's what you're here to find out, right? And I'm not going to go on a major ramble before we get to that point. We're going to talk about the ship, we're going to talk about the fit, and then I'm going to showcase it in action. If you do enjoy this video, find it useful, find it helpful, let me know, drop a comment down below, hit like. Both of those things really help the channel out by essentially saying to YouTube, hey, I'm enjoying this content, show it to other people. Subscribe as well if you haven't already, and if you do want to go the extra mile to support me financially, well, we'll talk about that later. For the meantime, let's just jump right in to talking about the Minmatar Republic's Maelstrom battleship and how this holds up for C3 J-Space ratting. First off then, let's talk about the Maelstrom hull in specific. What makes this ship, well, the Maelstrom, other than its aesthetics? Like, statistically, what is the Maelstrom? Well, it is a Tech 1 Minmatar battleship. Being Tech 1 means you can use it as an alpha player. Being a battleship means it is obviously large style weapons and fittings and things like that. Looking at its ship characteristics and stats here, it does of course have the standard battleship roll bonuses, 100% bonus to shield extender hit points, 50% bonus to armor plate hit points, and a 5% additional bonus to reinforced bulkhead hit points. Not overly important in regards to the fit that we're looking at. This is traditional for pretty much every battleship in the game has these roll bonuses, but it's worth noting that it's there. If you fit a shield extender, you're going to get twice as many hit points as you would normally. Cool, I guess. But it is a Minmatar battleship, Tech 1 battleship, available to alpha pilots, and gets bonuses purely from Minmatar battleship. Each level of that skill is going to give you a 5% bonus to the large projectile turret rate of fire. That's 25% at full training. And we get a 10% bonus to shield booster amount, 50% at full training. Now you'll notice that this increases your DPS, but also your ammo consumption, whilst also increasing your tankiness, your survivability. Minmatar ships are pretty well renowned for being available to be both shield and armor tanked, but it's kind of clear here that the Maelstrom is going to be a shield tanked battleship. We've got that shield booster amount bonus, and it would be kind of a waste to not use that by armor tanking it. So we are going to be shield tanking this one. And of course, we're going to be using large projectiles. Again, we've got a rate of fire bonus here, which is going to increase our overall DPS, but it's going to cause us to chew through a bit more ammo than perhaps we would do if it was just, say, a 5% bonus to large projectile turret damage. The flip side of this, though, is that notice we have no bonuses here to anything like tracking or fall off or optimal range. There are no range or application bonuses here. That is something we are going to have to consider when it comes to ratting, because we need this to be able to deal with frigates, cruisers, destroyers, the smaller scale ships, as well as larger vessels. And of course, large turrets don't have the best tracking, to put it mildly. Let's have a look at the actual fit then that I've got running for this. Now, the Maelstrom has actually surprised me. I've tried running a couple of Tech 1 battleships in C3 ratting anomalies, and a lot of them really struggle. The Maelstrom is not one of those. Fortification frontiers, this thing clears very, very easily. Things like the Arus and the Solar Cell, a little bit trickier, but absolutely doable. And with the right skills, the right piloting, or a warp off at some point in the middle of the final wave, it absolutely runs the Outpost Frontier Stronghold as well. So you can do all 4 of the C3 wormhole ratting sites with the Maelstrom. If you're looking at C4 ratting, you're probably going to want either a different ship or multiples, if only because the spawn distance between the different points in a C4 anomaly is so huge. The range on this doesn't get many particularly advanced bonuses, therefore it takes a long time to get between the waves to actually start applying your damage. Even if you modify this fit to add in something like a micro warp drive, it's just not worth it. Bring additional ships or use something else that is better suited for C4. As for C3, it's worth talking about the Forgotten, the Unsecured, and things like gas sites as well. This should have no problem with any of those. Again, as long as you're careful in an Unsecured or a Forgotten data relic site, and as long as you're just keeping an eye on the rats in the gas sites, for example, in a wormhole, you will have no trouble with. This will clear those quite comfortably. Now, I mentioned earlier that we've got damage bonuses, but we don't have application bonuses. This means that for our high slots here, I've gone for dual 650mm repeating cannon 2s. The dual 650mm repeating cannons are essentially medium cannons that have kind of got the large ammo capacity to them. They've got better tracking than any of the other large cannons, but they don't have quite the same amount of damage as a large cannon, but they're better than mediums, if that makes sense. It kind of fills this mid-range between medium autocannons and large autocannons, and this is going to really help us out when it comes to hitting some of those smaller vessels. You'll see we do still have decent range, optimal range to 3 kilometers, fall off out to about 28 kilometers. This means if you are going up against like the Awakened Upholders that like to orbit at 30 kilometers, they're only just outside of fall off range, which means your DPS, which here I've got about 950, does drop to about 50% with hail loaded. So that would take us down to, from 950 down to about 475, I think, if my maths is going well on that, which is still respectable DPS against those ships that refuse to get closer than 30 kilometers. Of course, if we swap to, say, Barrage, we actually do even better, so it's worth carrying Barrage. I also carry either Fusion, Phased Plasma, or EMP large as well. It doesn't matter which, because Sleepers have Omni Resists, and those 3 ammos are exactly the same, except in their damage profile, they'll do the same DPS to Sleepers. They get better range than Hail, not as good as Barrage, and they get better tracking than Hail, but with lower DPS to compensate. So I carry one of those 3, along with Hail and Barrage, which I will swap and change between depending what I'm shooting at. Basically, Hail for anything that's within 30 kilometers and medium or larger ships. I will swap to Phased Plasma, Fusion, or EMP when I'm going up against the small ships, because I want that better tracking. And depending on what I'm shooting, I'll probably stick to Phased Plasma, EMP, or Fusion for going up against things like the Upholders as well. The reason I have Barrage is for example, Wave 3 of the Fortification Frontier Stronghold. If that spawns a little bit far away, I will swap to Barrage in order to take out some of those ships early on, whilst I'm closing the gap close enough to then swap down to Phased Plasma for the small ships and Hail for the battleship that's in that wave. That kind of thing. As I said, we are shield tanking this. This means our mid slots are going to be an extra large shield booster 2, propped up with 2 multi-spectrum shield hardener 2s. In the low slots, I've gone for a capacitor power relay 2s just to help prop that up, alongside 2 Thukker large cap batteries here. Again, Thukker Cap Large or Republic Fleet Large, it is kind of up to you which you go for. I personally prefer Thukker for the additional resistance to electronic warfare, but I know some people prefer Republic Fleet. Republic Fleet is a little bit more expensive on the market as well, so this helps keep the cost down a touch over using Republic Fleet. I think Republic Fleet does just about pull ahead if you're looking at Pyfer, but again, Pyfer isn't everything. And then finally, in regards to Shield Tank and Capacitor, We have our rigs, large EM shield reinforcer just to pull up our electromagnetic resistances, alongside a large semiconductor memory cell 2 and a large capacitor control circuit 2, just to help with our capacitor stability. You'll notice things are cap stable, but not very. That is, of course, because we're using an extra large shield booster. That means we're 3.2 gigajoules per second of delta on the capacitor. That is not sufficient to survive when you are being neutralized by multiple upholders. In fact, one upholder, awakened upholder, is enough to get rid of this. The sleepless upholder will just utterly wreck this anyway. But you'll notice that if I turn off the extra large shield booster, it's 75.2 gigajoules per second, which is enough to survive any wave at cap stability. You just have to cycle your shield booster against things like the first wave of the Aru's construct, or the final wave of Fortification Frontier, where you've got the awakened and sleepless upholder. Until one of those ships is dead, you're just going to have to keep cycling your shield booster to keep your cap stability up. Our final slots then are damage and application. In the mid slots, a Domination Stasis Webifier, can also be a Federation Stasis Webifier. It doesn't really matter which one you go for there, they're pretty much the same, so whichever one's cheaper on the market for you. I had a Domination kicking around. In the low slots, I've gone for 2 Tracking Enhancer 2s and 1 Gyrostabilizer II. Again, you might find that with the right skills or the right enemies you're up against, you could swap one of those tracking enhancers for a second Gyrostabilizer for a bit more DPS, but I found that this gave the best balance for DPS against tracking. Yes, against battleship heavy waves, the additional Gyrostabilizer helped, but as soon as you've got more frigate-centric or cruiser-centric waves, the lack of that tracking enhancer really did drop the DPS. We do also have the capacity to use drones in this, 100 cubic meters of drone base space alongside 100 megabits per second of drone capacity. Therefore, you can fit a full flight of large drones in here, 4 large drones in here. If you want to, heavy drones, that will do quite nicely against especially the battleship waves, but carry a load of medium drones in there as well to allow you to, which is what I've currently got fitted, hence the 50 megabits per second, which will be your kind of mainstay for going up against the frigates and the destroyers. I tend to use Vespers, but you could use things like, not Hobgoblins, what are they called, the middle ones, Hammerheads. Hammerheads would be a good option there for the middle ones as well. If you're going to go with heavy drones, I would strongly recommend Wasps over Ogres, because Ogres are very slow. Yeah, it's slightly higher DPS, but it takes so long to get to the target and they miss quite frequently. I think the Vespers provide a nice solid middle ground on that. Anyway, enough of me showcasing and talking about the fit, let's actually see this in action. Now, before I do so, I just want to borrow your attention briefly. I know no one likes a donation drive, they're always a little bit bleh, people skip ahead of them on the video, but it does really help me out. If you do want to support the channel financially, I've got a Patreon page and a PayPal tip jar that you can pledge to support and really help me keep making content like this. Every dollar really helps keep this channel going. Obviously, I do earn a little bit through ad revenue from YouTube, but the additional donations really just help me keep doing what I do, both on the sort of the mental health side of things. Actually seeing donations come through means the world to me. It means that there are people out there who want to support my content, and that really cheers me up. On the other hand as well, having that extra $5 in my account to go and buy myself a coffee helps keep me at the energy levels required to make this kind of content, and I do hope you're enjoying it. You'll see at the end of the video a list of Patreon supporters. They get their name in the stars as well, as a big thank you for their continued support and donations to the channel. If you're new to EVE Online and you're watching this kind of video as well, I do have a referral code in the description down below. If you've not used a referral link before, clicking that and signing in will earn you 1 million free skill points, and it gives me an in-game kickback as well that allows me to keep buying ships and things in-game without worrying too much about the ISK that I lose for doing this kind of stuff. Because I did lose a Maelstrom whilst trying to sort this video out. I was trying to bring it back into the hole, and I did get caught by a gate camp. That wasn't fun, but hey, at the same token, well done to those guys for getting a good kill. They set up really quickly. Our scouts missed it, like we'd had a complete clear scouting route, and then as I warped to a connecting wormhole, bam, gate camp, interdiction sphere down, load of other ships jumped me. Very clean, very quick kill, so well done to those guys. Anyway, let's now get on with that combat demonstration and showcase the Maelstrom in action. So here we are arriving in a fortification frontier stronghold with the Maelstrom fit that I've just showcased. Now, by this point in time, you should know the triggers of what you need to kill in each of these waves, so I'll try not to focus on that too much. On arrival, first thing I do is activate both my Multispectrum shield hardeners in counterstep. This avoids you having a big tick of capacitor usage at the start. If they both activate at the same time, you get a big hit, and that can negatively impact your capacitor, so do try and counterstep modules like this if you can. I then drop the mobile tractor unit, bookmark it, bookmark it, bookmark it, bookmark it. Remember to bookmark your mobile tractor units so that if you do have to warp off, you know where to warp back to if the site despawns. Now, the first wave of a fortification frontier stronghold has 2 awakened defender cruisers and 2 emergent defender frigates. The frigates are the easy kills, the defenders are the triggers. So I'm going to swap my ammo here to make sure that I'm using the phased plasma or EMP or fusion. I forget which one it is now. Shield boosting just a little bit as I'm taking that damage. As the emergent defenders get closer, you can see I'm mainly hitting with my hobgoblins here rather than the cannons. They're missing quite frequently. Once we're in range, though, we're going to put that Webifier on within the 15-kilometer range and then start to shoot with the cannons. And you'll see these do now start to actually hit. Against the frigates, though, well, I say that and they're still missing. Your group of dual 650, but there we are. We got a nice big hit there of 890. Bam, down it goes. Hopefully the second one will go down a little bit faster. This is always the difficulty of going up against frigates in this kind of environment. You'll also notice I've got a Hobgoblin II that is really taking quite a bit of damage there. So I'm going to bring that one back. You'll also notice I've actually brought Hammerheads and Hobgoblins rather than talking about Vespers and Hammerheads, but there we go. This was one of the earlier testing videos, and it was just a nice, easy kill, nice and clean, not much else interrupting. With both of the frigates down, we can start on the defenders, and the defenders being cruisers, much easier to hit, and you'll see the cannons have no difficulty up against these at all. A few grazes here and there, but it's still hitting, it's still dealing damage, and if we orbit in close, I like to get within 10 kilometers if I can. Again, once the Webifire's on, then absolutely you start to do good damage with that. You can go for a target painter. Theoretically, a target painter is going to help you out against things like the cruisers and that because you're a little bit slow to move. Anything outside of 15 kilometers, naturally you can't use the web. You can use a target painter on, or a guidance computer. Tracking computer, sorry, is also a good option for this. I personally found the Webifier to be the better option because, yeah, okay, I can't use the Webifier against stuff that's more than 15 kilometers away, but it's the frigates that are the main problems, and the frigates never stay further than 15 kilometers. They come within Webifier range, and they're the main reason that you want webs. So I found that when using a tracking computer or a target painter, the increase to your application wasn't sufficient to really make it worthwhile because the frigates you still really struggle to handle. Whereas, yeah, okay, you're doing better against the cruisers and things, but the frigates are where the problem lies. So they're why we're using a web rather than a tracking computer or a target painter. But again, if you've got really good skills in one of these and not in the others, don't really think that's a thing, though. I say that now, and I just don't think that's a thing. Like, yeah, if the skills for target painters, and that pretty much affect Webifiers as well, don't they? I don't remember. Anyway, Wave 2. God, stop talking crap, Benzie. Wave 2, 2 awakened upholders, both with neutralizers and webs, and 2 awakened defenders. It is the upholders that are the triggers. We want to get rid of one of these quickly, so that we can get rid of the neutralizing effect on us, but we need to keep one of them alive until the end of the wave. Now you'll see, because I've got a range here, a fall-off range, I think of just over 30 kilometers at this point. These are not doing all that much damage. There we are, 37 kilometers. So we're doing 50% DPS against these targets currently. This is where I theoretically should have swapped to barrage to help just take out that one target quickly. But again, you kind of ask yourself, it takes 10 seconds to reload into barrage, and then it's going to take 10 seconds to reload back into phased plasma or hail or whatever you want to use against the awakened defenders. Is it worth that 20-second downtime? Possibly, especially if you reload into barrage the second you kill the previous wave while you're still locking on, so you can start shooting sooner. Probably worth it then, but for the most part, I like to keep it simple. Same as I'm just using Republic Fleet Fusion. You could use, obviously, just standard Fusion. You're just going to have slightly lower DPS than I do with the Republic fleet. It's one of those things that, again, it's more cost to use the Fusion L, but the additional DPS does mean that you are clearing the sites a little bit faster, and I find that works out more beneficial overall. Obviously, being in a wormhole as well, keep descanning. You may be asking yourself, there are 4 shuttles and a rifter, why are you so calm ratting? Because I've already identified, excuse me again, what is up with my throat today? I've already identified that that is a rifter and 4 shuttles currently sitting in a POS. They are no threat to me, I can't get rid of them, but if I spot something else come up on descan, yeah, that could be a problem. At this point in time, I've actually got a friend in a cloaky buzzard sitting on that POS. So if someone else does log in and starts moving around, he's there to see it as well and can shout at me that, hey, this has just arrived, Benzie, might want to keep your eyes open. And actually, just after I finished this site, I warped back to the wormhole connection back home, and we did suddenly have a small fleet arrive on us. We all got away quite safely because we'd all finished at that point in time. But obviously it pays to be aware when you're ratting in J-space. Don't forget to descan. Forewarned is forearmed. That's the sentence I'm looking for. Forewarned is forearmed. So your big tips are, yeah, keep descanning, bookmark your MTU, and have an escape strategy. And of course, know your triggers. It's pretty crap if you don't know your triggers and you're, you know, trying to J-space rat. You are just going to lose whatever ship you're flying when you accidentally trigger a wave early. Nothing worse than shooting both of the awakened upholders in this phase, for example, and being left with 2 awakened defenders as the entire of wave 3 spawns. The DPS that you have there is suddenly a lot higher and can be really problematic. Now you'll see that because I am being neutralized at this point, I am cycling my shield booster. I'm not really taking enough damage to worry about running it constantly, so I'm just cycling to make sure that I stay ahead of things. Anyway, we're coming into the third and final wave. Again, at this point, I really should be reloading into Barrage. I know that everything here is essentially at my fall-off range, so I can kind of get away with it. But if I'd gone into Barrage, it is actually beneficial because the, the fall-off range is so much further out. The loss in overall DPS is made up for by the fact that you are well into your fall-off rather than being on the edge of fall-off. Now, here's where I make a massive mistake. Yes, of course, I have to take screenshots, and this is why I wanted to show this particular bit of footage. I take screenshots to showcase what I'm doing and use as thumbnails for the videos. This time, I forgot to turn the shield booster on before doing so, and I am, therefore, about 1/3 of the way of my shield left, 2/3 of the way through my shield before I actually activate my shield booster. And I'm taking a lot of incoming damage. Had the shield booster been running from the start, this would probably be about 2/3 of the shield remaining rather than 2/3 missing, which means it's going to keep going whilst I reduce the incoming DPS. As I shoot targets and destroy them, obviously the amount of DPS that I'm taking back is reduced. That said, because I left it so late and I'm quite low, you'll see that I do start threatening to go into armor, which is why I've now had to overheat the shield booster. If you're activating the shield booster early in the wave, you won't need to overheat like I am here. This is just because I messed up because I was too busy taking screenshots. You will probably need to overheat in the third and final wave of the Outpost Frontier Stronghold as well, because those 2 battleships hit like trucks. But again, a well-timed warp out can also save you from having to do that. But if you are going after the Outpost Frontiers, bring some nanite paste. Just a thought. Thermodynamic skill, very useful. More useful than I used to think it was, actually. I overheat a lot more these days, but there we are. Like here, I could also overheat the Webifier just to get that little bit of extra range and hit this a bit more, like, powerfully, strongly, directly. Whatever phrase you want to use for the hitting. But as I'm getting closer to the Sleepless Upholder, I would normally take out the battleship first because it's big, heavy damage and it's neutralizing me. But because it's far enough away to be essentially outside of my fall-off range, I'd rather reduce the DPS quickly on those cruisers first. And that is kind of one of the questions I get asked a lot. How do you know which things you should be shooting at other than your triggers? And there's no easy way to say that. Like in this situation, it's normally the upholder I want to go for because it's neutralizing me. It's big, scary guns and I want it dead quick. But because it's so far away, I'm not doing much DPS to it, so it's going to stay there for a long time, and all 3 ships are going to be DPSing me, whereas if I take out one of those Awakened Defenders first, the incoming DPS gets dramatically reduced, and I love the graphics and the sound effects of large autocannons. They're just really cool. Look at that, just like broadsides off the side. If you're wondering why the footage is stuttering, those little stutters, it's not that my computer can't handle Eve, it really can. That's me pressing the screenshot button. There's a brief freeze for a moment as it screenshots, but there we go. We're now slowly beginning to chew our way through the Sleepless Upholder. Again, at this point, I really should have been moving on to Barrage because of the range distance here. But again, keeping it simple, I'm just using I think it's Fusion, was it? No, yeah, Republic Fleet Fusion Large. Yeah, you see me swap to Barrage here, actually, just because it's staying outside of that range and being comfortably in the, closer to the optimal, less fall off means I'm doing a higher percentage of a lower number, which lower DPS number overall, which does actually work out beneficial for me. Still grabbing screenshots because it's pretty and I just like getting screenshots of ships. It's good fun. But hopefully this has kind of shown that, yeah, this ship is more than capable of running these anomalies, and it does so in good time. I mean, we're looking at, what, 11 minutes at this point for me getting this far through the wave? So it's about 13, 14 minutes for the full sight, and that's with me not min-maxing my drone usage or my ammo cycling. So you can get better clear times than I'm getting here, if you really care to. But otherwise, is the Maelstrom good for C3 wormhole ratting? Yeah. It's a really good ship. It's got the tank to survive the incoming DPS. It's got good outgoing damage. If you're using duels rather than just, large autocannons or whatever, you're going to be doing better application, better damage, lower overall DPS, but you're getting a significantly higher percentage of that DPS. Like, it's all very well and good having 1,000 DPS, but if you can only hit 50% of the time, that's essentially 500 DPS. Whereas if I drop to 800 DPS and I'm doing that, 100% of the time, that's so much better. Anyway, I am going to leave that here, just with me taking some more screenshots of the battleship hopefully exploding in the background in a second. Otherwise, thanks for watching this one right the way through to the end, folks. Let me know how you get on with this. What do you think of the Maelstrom? Is this a ship you enjoy flying, one that you're going to try out? Would love to hear your thoughts and more in the comment section down below. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!